This is the Writing for Science 2 presentation, Tips on Word Use and Proofreading. You'd like to be well understood, so you want to make sure that you have some precision in the way that you write when you write for science. Instead of using subject to define a participant in a research protocol, say patient, say rat, frog, mouse, gymnast, whatever it was, say what it was. When you're talking about a value that has changed, don't say that the level went up, say that the concentration increased or the frequency decreased. Whatever the value is, you want to be precise about it. There's also situations where people will say that there are many examples when there's only one. If there's only one, say there's only one. If there's many, say there are many. I've seen lots of reports from students when they say that this is supported by several other studies and then they only cite one study. Well, that's not legal, at least not in a scientific sense. If you say there's several other studies, then you should be able to cite several other studies to make that point. There's a problem with the word "this." Sometimes it can be ambiguous in what it refers to. And so rather than just using "this" without what it refers to, say what it refers to and then you remove the ambiguity. So you can say "this test" or "this problem" or "this trial," and it becomes much more clear than if you just say "this shows that." Well, what is this? This test shows that. That's what you want to convey. Make sure that your reader knows what you're talking about. Now, this came from this book, Guidelines for Scientific Writing. Ideally, you would check every word to see if it could be replaced by a better one. No one expects you to do that. But it is expected that you will put down your paper, you'll not think about it for a while, you go back to it, read it, and then as you read it, you can reconsider some of your word choices and make sure that every sentence explains things exactly the way you want it to. We do want you to try to use the appropriate amount of words to explain your thoughts. Sometimes that means taking away a few words, sometimes that means adding a few words. Here are some examples. Use "because" instead of "based on the fact that." Based on the fact that is not an inappropriate thing, but it's unnecessarily wordy. Sometimes you can use "for" or "to" instead of "for the purpose of." Doesn't mean you have to replace every instance, just means that when you have a sentence and you run across a clause like "based on the fact that," you consider, should I shorten this or not? You may find some of the phrases below, or some of the phrases that I'm going to show you, as other places where you might change how you word it. So in close proximity, let's try "close to." Very close to zero, nearly zero. Much better, just say it's better. Period of time, you could say "period." Summarize briefly. Well, to summarize is to make it more condensed, so you could just say "summarize." The reason is because can be shortened to "the reason is." Also included could just be "included." In order to can be shortened to "to." Except for can be changed to "except." You'll also find that words like "very" or "extremely" don't appear very often in scientific reports. So if you find yourself thinking, oh, this is a very important result, maybe it's just an important result. Sometimes other ideas can be simplified. There were several subjects who completed. Can just be several subjects. It is suggested that a relationship may exist. Can be shortened. Well, alike. One and the same could just be identical. Total of "in" subjects could just be "in" subjects. for different groups and for groups. I think that that's pretty self-explanatory. If it's absolutely essential, then essential serves perfectly well by itself. And if it was found previously, found is the past tense of find. So found essentially assumes it was found previously. So different ways to express yourself. Small in size is just small. When you use the term however, that usually means that you're trying to give the reader notice that you're going to give an exception to the rule. Try not to use that too often. Will Hopkins in his textbook suggests that we don't use a however or words like it more than once in a paragraph, because you can essentially get your reader's attention, but not in a good way. And he also says that we shouldn't use it more than once every 10 paragraphs. No one's going to count to see how many times you use it in 10 paragraphs. But if you do find yourself using the same word many times, you might want to consult a thesaurus. Also, there's some specific words that are used in scientific discussions that have different forms for singular and plural. So a singular criterion, multiple criteria, a single datum, multiple is data, single is medium, multiple is media, and a single observation is a phenomenon, and multiple observations are phenomena. So understand the differences and use them in the appropriate places. Now, when you're proofreading, the whole idea is to clean up your document. You're looking at it to see where you may have either made a mistake or where you could express something better. It's also important that you don't submit sloppy work. It just doesn't give the reader a very good impression of how you've put things together. Be mindful that the spell check that's built into most word processors often doesn't recognize scientific terms, so you'll have to do that spell checking yourself, or you'll have to inform the spell check that this word, I'm going to use it more than once. It's spelled correctly, and it should remember that so that it doesn't prompt you to add a misspelled word, or in some cases automatically substitute a word that it thinks is the right word. Or if you do happen to misspell it, if you've already added it to your dictionary, then it will prompt you to correct it and help you with that. Grammar check, which Microsoft Word turns on by default, will often complain that you've written a scientific article in a passive voice. Well, sometimes what the word processor's passive voice checking interprets as a passive voice is a phrase that's commonly used in science, and I wouldn't worry about that complaint from a word processor all too much. Here are some examples of things that may have benefited from some proofreading. Imagine more snacks than you can imagine. Well, I find that very difficult to do. Hunters, please use caution when hunting pedestrians using walk trails. Hope they're not hunting the pedestrians. Illegally parked cars will be fine. Well, I guess then it doesn't matter that it's private parking. Attention, toilet only for disabled, elderly, pregnant children. Those are a very small class of the people who might be shopping at this particular store. And let's compare "Let's eat, Grandpa" with "Let's eat, Grandpa." Use commas appropriately. So proofread and hopefully clarify and remove some of the mistakes that might be in your writing. Now, here are some hints that might apply to both editing and to proofreading. Sometimes it's good to put the text down. I think I've mentioned this before. Get away from it. Clear your head. It may be for a day, it may be for an hour, depending on the process and how quickly you put your documents together. Take a mental break, whether it's by exercising, like taking a run, or watching a television show, or just chatting with friends, and then you can get back to your work. Once you've cleared your mind, sometimes it helps you to see things with fresh eyes. Some people can proofread on the computer. Other people do it better when they've printed things out. Figure out what works for you and then use that format for your proofreading. Sometimes it's beneficial to change the look of your document. You can change the typeface or the size of the text or the color of the text. And sometimes that makes you think, your brain sort of perceive it as a different document, which can help you to read the document and not gloss over or pass by mistakes that you would normally catch. Don't try to proofread while you're watching television. Don't get your mental break and your proofreading done at the same time. You need to find a place where you can concentrate on your document and avoid distractions. It's useful to do these types of tasks in short blocks rather than all at once because, hey, it's your attention span. You get burnt out trying to do this all at once. So try to break up some time, define some time, break it up to go through your document and get through the entire document before you submit it. That's the extent of these suggestions. If you come up with some suggestions that I can use for other classes, I'd appreciate hearing from you. Otherwise, I hope that these have been useful to you, and I will be looking forward to reading your papers.